Hey, it's Soul with another video, brought to you in part by Shaddix. For a good night's sleep, rest in a Shaddix. Today I want to talk World PvP in Battle for Azeroth because Blizzard has not yet. I admit this is a weird topic for me, I'm no PvPer. My prestige is low, I have no arena rating whatsoever, you get the deal. But PvP has always been something that interested me enough to not want to entirely close myself off from it. I like the dynamic of it, it's why I roll on a PvP realm, much to the displeasure of some of my guildmates who care even less about it. PvP in WoW's upcoming expansion, Battle for Azeroth, is going through yet another massive shift that's going to change how all players look at the game. Again, if you recall the whole thing about stat templates and removing PvP gear. Here's what we know, and this could definitely change before the expansion goes live. The flags that separate PvP and PvE realms are going away. In this sense, all realms will be considered the same type. Instead, PvP will be a toggled a player turns off and on while in a capital city, which could mean a faction capital city or faction hub like Dalaran, but we don't know for sure yet. And that's about it, but it's huge. This change is meant to address a few things, including the situation I described, where I decided to play on a PvP realm and pretty much forced my guildmates into it. That's no longer a thing, good for them. PvP will instead be a sort of sub-game, played by choice. That sounds kind of neat, knowing that I'll be around more like-minded individuals as opposed to a mix of the willing and the ganked. The current system, according to Ian Hazzikostas, unfortunately, hamstrings world design. You need to have a place for PvE content, obviously, while PvP content takes place in three types of places. An instance, like a battleground or an arena, a fixed area, like Ashran, and this also includes places where PvP-based world quests take place. And then there's everywhere else where world PvP can occur. Creating an ideal world PvP situation is kind of a crapshoot. A hotbed like Hellfire Peninsula or Hillsbrad Foothills isn't an easy thing to create because for the most part that kind of thing happens naturally. In this case, we can look back and identify those as leveling areas, which are often a hotbed for ganking and escalation until there's an all-out war. So what will Blizzard create for a pair of subcontinents where presumably PvP will be allowed anywhere? I have no freaking idea what they'll do, but I'm gonna cook up a few game design ideas on what's possible. The following ideas are bad, I have no illusions otherwise. They're full of reasons why they should never happen, but that's not the point of this exercise. I wanted to explore the idea of Biffa PvP and share some of these high-level concepts, so maybe we'll have a taste of what to expect. So I encourage you to all at least have an open mind and consider what's possible, not just what's dumb. So when I started approaching ideas on outdoor PvP in Biffa, I came to this quick and potentially devastating conclusion straight away. Flying mounts will break everything once they're available, so the natural reaction to this is that flight should be disabled while flagged for PvP. Oh my god, okay, I know I'm starting off with a real winner here, but hear me out. From both a player and a design standpoint, I perceive flying as a bonus and an obvious shortcut for content, PvE content, that is. In PvP though, it doesn't have a great fit. It obviously doesn't have a place in instanced PvP, which is why we don't see it. The idea behind disabling flight isn't necessarily to make PvP more exciting. There are arguments that flying in PvP is damaging because you can just swoop in on an unsuspecting victim, or you can use a few tricks to get out of combat, hop on your flying mount, and off you go. That's part of the reason, but not the foundation of why I think flight should be disabled. I'm more focused on flying disrupting the game design of PvP itself. Because imagine if you can fly in Warsong Gulch. Warsong Gulch wouldn't be Warsong Gulch if you can fly in Warsong... Okay, I was trying to be funny, sorry. The point I'm trying to sell is that PvP is just less fun when flying is in the mix. It throws out too many rules. Disabling flight prevents the circumventing of whatever game modes Blizzard is trying to design. So going forward, we'll approach outdoor PvP in Biffa without any flying in mind. Now let's move on. Like I said, there are three kinds of PvP in WoW. Let's throw out instance PvP because that's not part of the conversation. There are set locations and world quests, and these sound fine if not a little predictable. I'm going to reveal a few very basic ideas that can be built on to create a more expansive delivery for PvP, and there are two pillars to my approach. Pride, as in pride for your faction, and conflict, never-ending conflict. As a reminder, and I can't believe I'm saying this twice, I did not think these ideas through, so I know they're full of holes and challenges, and if you want to leave a comment telling me how dumb they are, I'm not going to stop you, but don't worry, I know. We already got clued in that being flagged for PvP will give you things like bonus armor or some sort of buff for completing PvE-based content throughout the world, something like that. But I'd like to think that being flagged for PvP will be much more than that. that it'll add even more possible gameplay that, like they said, wouldn't normally be possible. So let's explore that. One thing that was mentioned was a sort of bounty system, and I'll try to touch on that later. So let's start with faction hubs. We don't know with 100% certainty whether or not we'll have a faction-based capital on either continent. Let's pretend that we do though, and that there's a Horde and Alliance base of operations complete with a faction leader. So one easy objective would be to give a nice weekly honor reward for killing them, and this bonus is only rewarded while flagged for PvP of course. Meanwhile, honor kills for the defending faction are worth more than when you're out in the world, encouraging defense. See? Simple. So let's set that aside for now. Designing PvP in Biffa doesn't have to be 100% about tangible rewards like gear or honor or even cosmetics. A lot of the enjoyment of world PvP comes with, well, the joy of killing. And of course, the feeling of victory over your opponent. Because this is world PvP, we're all about the Alliance versus Horde conflict, and as we've seen, they'll fight over the stupidest stuff. It helps, but it doesn't always have to be about getting that strong box, that reward in the end. Here's an example. What if a stripped down version of the honor rank system came back? It was a controversial system back in classic WoW with a super intense grind when trying to push for Grand Marshal or High Warlord. But let's start with something really simple, like a public leaderboard. The players with the most honor kills or honor gained for the week will be listed there, and they can receive a temporary title that they can sport for like a week. That of course can be built on, and we can add rewards like achievements or an honor or an Azerite buff that can be earned at the end of the week, or I don't know, a weekly box of goodies if there was a demand for it. And remember that bounty system that I mentioned earlier? Let's add that into the honor rank system and have these top PvPers of the week also be worth a lot more honor gains if they're killed. But those top PvPers also earn a lot of honor for getting kills. The idea is to keep players out and engaged. We could reward them with gear instead, but speaking for myself, I'm not fond of rewarding a player with power, but instead reward them with an incentive to keep playing. So it's kind of an indirect power increase. Maybe it's a bad idea, oh well. But let's move into the world itself and see what's possible when that PvP switch is turned on. So around kul'tiras and Zandalar, let's have each zone have a bunch of capturable objectives. It's nothing special or even defensible, it could just be an arbitrary, chosen plot of empty land. Just places to take. When you hold the point for a certain duration like a minute or so, you take it, and it stays taken until the other faction takes it back. On your map, you can see that the map is color-coded according to which faction has an objective, and you can see an easy visual indicator of who has more territory. And that's a good start. It's simple zone control. And you want the map to look like the color of your faction, of course. There's no reward, just the pride in taking something away from the enemy and making your faction look good. And again, we can build on that too. What if this was related to the faction leaders, for example? Let's say that the faction leader takes super reduced damage or even no damage until one faction manages to get most or all the capture points, and then the faction leader is vulnerable for a certain duration. That could be a thing too. Next, we can randomly spawn a giant Azerite node somewhere around the continent. You can think of this as literally the seething shore, but it's world PvP instead. The faction that holds it for a certain duration, they get an Azerite and honor reward if you happen to be in the vicinity. And these can spawn a couple times a day. Also, escort objectives can appear, and you can call them payloads if that's more familiar to you. Somewhere, one faction will be alerted that there's a cart or an NPC that needs help getting from one place to another. A successful escort grants a reward. On the opposite side, destroying the escort grants a reward. Now how about we add a twist to this? A random player can be chosen to become the escort too. You might be out in the world and you can be prompted to accept and be part of this escort quest, but you can refuse it. Much like how a player can refuse to participate in the Legion pre-launch event where they turn into a Dreadlord. So this player can be told to travel to a certain location and they have a time limit to reach it. They'll be buffed, of course, with additional health and such because they're going to be marked as a very obvious target for the other faction. How about a capture the flag-like event? An event might start where players have to retrieve an item and hoof it all the way back to another location, as well as defend that location from attack. It's pretty much Warsong Gulch, except it happens in different zones or locations. It's basically not a battleground, but a zone, or even the continent. These are all just examples of what sorts of game modes are possible in world PvP that normally would not be possible. That's because the nature of these game modes just can't exist on PvE realms, and having them on PvP realms as they are now, it makes for quite a murder spree if you happen to be on a PvP realm and you're only there because your jerk of a guild leader made you go there. But these are game designs that can coexist on top of what we already experience, such as the world quest objectives in Legion, or areas that have a single use like in Ashran. I think there's a lot of potential for it to be great, or for it to suck. I know these ideas aren't very in-depth, but I wanted to get the gears moving. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please press that like button if you did, and subscribe for more of this and all things World of Warcraft. Share your thoughts in a comment below. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.